Hi everyone, welcome to Tripadvisor Talk, a weekly discussion show in which we will connect with leaders from the travel as well as digital sectors to talk about what's happening, how and when we can start traveling again, or start spending money again, or start coming together again, and the changing face of our collective industries in light of recent events. My name is Jane Lim, and I'm very excited to introduce my guests today. Arif from Chope, Alan from Otto, Sarah from Sasha's Fine Foods, Penny from Carousel, and Kyrian from OGS, Our Grandfather Story. So thank you all for joining us today. And before we kind of launch into the meat of our discussion, maybe everyone can just do a quick intro, say hi to our audience, tell them what you do. Let's start with Arif, and then you can pass the ball on.
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Arif. I'm the CEO and founder of Chope. We are Asia's largest restaurant platform. We help restaurants with technology. Obviously, we help them take reservations. We help do delivery. We help do all kinds of stuff for restaurants. And so we work with about 6,000 restaurants here across Asia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Indonesia, Thailand, and China. Thanks.
You want to pass the ball on to somebody?
Sure. Penny?
Hey, I'm Penny. I'm the SVP of Growth for Carousel. Carousel is one of the world's largest and fastest growing classifieds marketplaces online. As the SVP of Growth, I'm responsible for the marketing organization, but also growth as a whole. So everything that encompasses the buyer and seller experience on our platform. And I'll pass to Sarah.
Thanks, Penny. Hi, everyone. My name's Sarah. I'm General Manager of Sasha's Fine Foods. We are an award-winning online grocer in Singapore, selling high-quality and sustainable food to everyone in Singapore, and we deliver it to your door. I will now pass to Alan.
Right, I'm Alan. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Otto. And what we do here, we're very much a F&B e-commerce solution for restaurants, cafes, bakeries, essentially their preferred online revenue partner to grow their online delivery and takeaway business. So we do have presence in Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, and Taiwan with over 3,000 plus F&B brands working with us. Yep, and I'll pass the ball over to Kyrian from Our Grandfather Story.
Hi guys, I'm Kyrian from Our Grandfather Story, co-founder. So we are a digital publisher that tells stories across Southeast Asia. So you can find us on like the social media platforms. Yep. Back to you.
Okay. Thanks everyone for the round of intros. So today's session for Tripadvisor Talk focuses on Singapore and asks the topic, how have digital services coped, succeeded, or stuttered during the pandemic? And we'll start with, a very general question, across what you see personally and, in your business, how have you seen consumer demand change due to COVID-19? For some of you, in e-commerce, what purchase patterns have changed? For some of us that are in content, what content is more relevant? So we can do deep dives in these first, but maybe let's just start with very broad strokes. How do you see demand changing?
I can start with a very simple one, starting with everyone needing some food. So yeah, there's been obviously in the whole globe, but the Singapore market in particular, a huge shift to buying and shopping online for food. Because people, for obvious reasons, because of restrictions, people are not eating out, people are not shopping. So the share of wallet, I think, suddenly people want to spend a bit more on food. And I think that's where we've seen a lot of growth. People are more interested in food as well. And I think there's an emotional element there. People are, finding comfort in food. And certainly I know, because I can't find any flour anywhere in Singapore, people are baking more and sharing more about what they're eating and all that kind of thing. And I think there's a higher value now placed on convenience and getting food products safely delivered to your door than the shift has been before. Maybe it was on price and promotion. That's what we've noticed.
I can jump in next. I think Carousel's been a really interesting place to watch this whole thing play out, because we really end up being on the cutting edge of a lot of things. So I think as soon as supply chains get broken, Carousel is one of the places that people go to. So the first thing we saw was demand for masks and sanitizer. As soon as that was running out in the shops, people go to Carousel to both buy and sell these different items. I think, that those demands have changed as circuit breaker has gone on. So that was the first thing we saw. Then it moved to home office equipment. People were looking for those things, sports equipment, so you can work out from home, toys and games to keep you occupied while you're at home. So we've really seen a change in what people are looking for, as Sarah was saying. I think also consumer behavior has obviously changed around. Previously, our business was very largely meetups, and this has forced a behavior change into doing more delivery-based transactions or mail-based transactions, which, is a change which we're expecting to come at some point anyway. It's just accelerated that change largely. And then lastly, we also are the first to know when McDonald's shuts down or bubble tea gets banned, because you see 1,000 listings on Carousel for these hard to get items, which we think is mostly tongue in cheek, but it's pretty fun.
That's interesting. Actually, to pick up on something you mentioned, Penny, on masks and sanitizers, and I know that as a consumer myself, because I think there was a period of 2 weeks where literally, there's a Facebook group I follow which basically sends out alerts on where masks and sanitizers are spotted. But I wanted to ask you on this. There was also the issue of people trying to profiteer off the scarcity of masks, and then hoarding them and then reselling them at a higher price. Did you guys take any steps to address this? And if there were steps taken, is there kind of some permanence in your policy change in terms of pricing going forward?
Sure. We take our responsibility here really seriously. So we did step in very quickly to address what we felt were scammers, or we set a price threshold that we thought was appropriate for people to pay. And anyone who wasn't doing that, you could report a listing and we would take it down. I think the other side that what we saw though was people who had these supplies were also willing to give them away. So we saw a lot of people listing on Carousel to either sell at a reasonable price or give away. And so what we did was try and make sure we were giving priority to those kind of community-based sellers who were actually doing a great job. So it wasn't all kind of doom and gloom on that side.
Actually, that's something I want to come back to, which is the goodness aspect of what is happening during this period. But I think before we go down that path, if the rest want to chime in and say, how have you seen demand shift in your business?
Okay, maybe I can share. Maybe Arif, you want to go first? Yeah, Arif, you can go first.
I think we're about to say the same thing in any case, because we both work with restaurants, and I think it's very difficult to understate the change that's happened in the F&B industry over the last 3 months, all the way from being something that people were doing in a very normal way in December and January, through a phase of worry and self-regulation and social distancing in February and March, to a complete lockdown and almost it being viewed as something that we don't know when restaurants are going to open again. We don't know when we can go out again. In hindsight, it was something that we took for granted. But now I think there's a huge amount of people who wish that they could just go out for a nice drink with their friends and be able to not worry about getting a life-threatening disease on a Friday night. So when will that time come again? We don't know. Nobody knows. So I think the huge changes in consumer behavior and everything that's resulted in the switch to delivery, takeaways, restaurants shutting, people eating out less and buying groceries more, just all kinds of changes that I can't summarize in one sentence.
Yeah. Alan?
All right, and for me, I guess although we're in a very interesting position, because essentially what we have been quietly doing for the past 4 years suddenly got put forefront into the limelight in the past 2 to 3 months. So essentially what we have been doing all along is to provide F&B businesses with an additional sales channel to grow their takeaway and delivery orders. And when we do this, it's very much of building their own brand, building up their own customer base, and allowing customers to order directly from them, and it's doing island-wide delivery. So obviously when circuit breaker came, there goes your dining business, and that's when the loyal customers, people who still wants that food, let's say I still want that cocktail from Atlas Bar at night when I'm at home, I can now order directly from them, and I think that's where during the circuit breaker period, we were prepared for it. We were able to roll things out quickly for restaurants, because as you can see, restaurants are not prepared for delivery business. In the past, they only work with marketplace, and once they realize that, when this happens, when all my dining sales are gone, where can I get the sales to really cover this loss? And thankfully, I think with our wealth of experience, we're able to roll things out quickly for everyone. Like I've mentioned in a number of interviews, I don't think we can really make sure that everyone is successful, but I think what we have done is to give everyone a fighting chance to, at least either do well or survive and get through this period. Yeah. So I think previously there were a lot of those corporate orders. Right now, I can tell you 90% of the time is family orders, right? And a lot of them are ordering in advance. So that also allows restaurants to manage things very differently from their day-to-day instant kind of orders, but now they can pre-plan, and that actually solves a lot of things for the restaurants.
That's interesting. So what you're saying is that users of Odell tend to order more in advance versus the usual platforms of Grab food or Deliveroo that's like instant. Okay, and that's because it attracts the customers right now are more loyal customer base, so they know the restaurant and they basically say, hey, I want that same cocktail, and so they're willing to place an order in advance. Is it like one day in advance, a couple of days in advance, or like a couple of hours?
It really depends. I think before circuit breaker happens, probably 70% will actually place 1 day in advance. But right now, during this period, I would say a good 80% of the customers still place order for the same day. It's just that it's not last minute. I think one perspective to consider, when do we use our third-party delivery platforms like your Foodpanda and Grab? That's when I'm hungry now, I want the food immediately. That's when you take out the app. But throughout the rest of the days, let's take away your dinner and lunchtime. Throughout the rest of the day, you'll be thinking, I'm working now, even at this moment, I'm thinking, what should I have for dinner? And then I'll start to think of the brands that I typically associate with. And that's when you go and check out their Facebook. That's when you go to their website. That's when you can actually order directly from them. Yeah, so I think that has changed a bit of the user behavior during this period.
Yeah, I think what you said comes back to what Sarah started with, which is food somehow has become more important now, and maybe that's because we're all stuck at home. And our activity to do for the day perhaps is ordering groceries or buying a mask online, or planning our meals. So that's very interesting.
People just want to spend money.
Go ahead, Ellen.
People just want to spend money.
Yeah, that's right. How about on the content front? Because I must say, even when I look at the content being created, I do see, your normal kind of influencers creating more content, and some of them are also seem to be venturing more into food. Like making, for instance, bubble tea pearls. Karian, what's your view on how content has changed in terms of what consumers are consuming in terms of content, but also maybe from a content creator perspective? What do you think is changing?
Okay. I mean, generally, like the digital consumption has definitely increased. Like in the past, like I guess 2 months, like we are seeing like more people like coming on board and watching like our videos. View times have increased. So and people are also like consuming different types of format. Yeah, so not just on like the different platforms, also different formats like live videos, etc. Yeah, so But there's one interesting thing to note is that we also run a podcast, but there has been a slight dip in the podcast, probably because like people are traveling less nowadays. Like you don't go out, right? So usually people listen to podcasts in their commute. But nowadays, like because we can't commute, we're staying at home. I think we are watching a lot more videos. Yeah. So and I think you're right in saying that there people are watching more food content. That's one of the things that we've been noticing. Yeah, so like people are pivoting to like creating recipe videos, cooking videos, and cook along like shows. Yeah, so that's what we've been seeing. Yeah, and it's really cool. Yeah, so I think today you see like even people like private dining chefs, hosts, they're creating their own like food shows. Yeah, so we have like more demand for like digital content now. And we also have an increase of supply. Yeah, because like everyone is stuck at home. And I mean, like everyone can create content very easily today. Yeah. So yeah, you have much more choices now.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so given all these changes in consumer demand, how have your businesses evolved or adapted to this in terms of whether it's a change in your product offering or the way you have had to operate? Because there are literally certain physical restrictions put in, or maybe even your go-to-market approach. How have you changed your business to cope with this pandemic? Let's start with Penny.
Sure. I think, it's really how our customers have had to change their behavior is a large part of what we've done. So we obviously have to facilitate more delivery options for people trying to transact between each other. So we've made a lot of partnerships with people like GoGoVan, Grab Express, Blue to facilitate that kind of transaction better. We have seen like demand has stayed very strong throughout, but obviously this big change of behavior where you can't necessarily meet up, so you can't validate the item that you're going to get. So that it requires a lot more trust in each other from both sides to really make those transactions happen. So that's what we're trying to facilitate with some of our partnerships. I think also we are a community marketplace. So we are trying to support the community as much as we can. So seeing some of these areas where people are choosing to give things away to each other or support local initiatives, that's the kind of things that we've been trying to do. So hawker centers typically are not particularly tech savvy operators. We've done some work with them to make sure they have an avenue to promote themselves digitally. We've also given quite a lot of advertising space away to charities for them to, again, continue to market themselves in this situation. But yeah, I guess the main one for us has really been this change in consumer behavior.
Yeah, I would agree with Penny. It's very much customer driven, isn't it? It's making sure and reassuring them. I suppose that's linked to the comms element that we were talking about before. It's reassuring them that it's still okay, and your delivery will be safe, and safety is our top priority for not only our customers but also our drivers and our frontline workers. So that was very much our priority and in our comms. In terms of what we've had to change, I mean, so many things. I guess from a customer point of view, our drivers used to go in, put all the products down in the kitchen, go through none of that. We obviously moved to contactless delivery very quickly, which was the drivers were wearing masks, and we put in place quite a lot of changes. The other thing, it affected our operations because they were doing more checks in all the condos. And so, all our sort of operations were affected as well. So, a lot of changes on the customer front side.
I'm curious, were there any supply chain issues? Because you guys actually import quite a lot of your product offering, right? Say from like Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah. There were many supply chain issues and still are. But luckily we work directly with most of our producers, so they're farmers. So we have quite a good relationship. So we were able to get them on the phone I mean, literally kind of hourly updates at one point, where's New Zealand at? Where's the UK at? Do we do an air freight? Do we not? And it was just so difficult to forecast the sales. So yeah, I mean, there were many, many moments of flights getting cancelled, flights getting delayed, out of stocks on the website. A lot of challenges. Pretty intense time at the beginning. It's now settled down, and I'm glad to say we're in a better place.
Good to hear. Arif, what about Chopon? I know that that was a new service that you guys brought to market. Keen to hear more about it, and how you think it will. What role do you think it will play even post COVID-19?
Well, you asked about digital transformation, how businesses have adapted to this. I think it's very, again, the impact on our business cannot be understated. We were sitting, in 2019 last year, we sat something like 11 to 13 million diners, and then that has dropped to 0, right? Well, during the lockdown. And so how do you face a challenge as daunting as that one? How do you, what do you do in the face of that? I think the phrase that keeps ringing in my mind is never let a crisis go to waste, right? We saw opportunities that arose at different phases during this crisis that it was almost like we weren't really looking for those specific opportunities, but they just occurred. So the first part was with the social distancing, where restaurants suddenly had a bunch of requirements to do things like limit the queues outside, contact tracing, putting tables, limiting how many people could dine in the restaurant, group sizes. And so, of course, using our technology, our table management system, which was already in the restaurants, in thousands of restaurants, we're able to quickly set those limitations up for restaurants and ensure that both that they were abiding by the regulations, and of course for diners ensuring that they were having a safer dining experience, because it's not just the rules. The rules are just in place to make life more difficult for the restaurants. They really were needed in this new environment. So, we were almost doing it instantly because it was something that could help everybody. And then in the next phase, when even that closed down, we quickly moved to, you're right, Chopon, which was our version of trying to respond to our restaurants' needs, right? We didn't sort of sit around and say, okay, we've been fantasizing about setting up a delivery business. The guys who've been in this business for a long time will tell you that it is a crowded market. There are a lot of players in there. I mean, besides, of course, Odell, there are the big 3 platforms in Singapore, and then there's, of course, people who are doing their own logistics and delivery. So we never dreamt about going into that space ourselves. But almost overnight, a number of opportunities appeared. The restaurants, first of all, were saying, we are looking for delivery options. And I think there's been no shortage of press in the last couple of months about talking about, the displeasure, if you want to put it that way, that a lot of restaurants have with the incumbents, right? Yeah. And I don't, look, it's a very complicated economic equation here involving many stakeholders. So I'm not going to try and opine about who is right or wrong here. But I will just say that for restaurants, a lot of them just cannot afford to pay commissions as high as those that were being charged on top of rents, on top of salaries, and not be making much revenue. So there was an opportunity in that sense. And then on the logistics side, we, as Chope, had always been a technology company, never a logistics company. But we were being approached by logistics partners, for example, taxi companies, right, who were seeing zero business or very little business during this period. And they were saying, please, can you help us find work for our drivers, right? Are there food deliveries that they can help do? And we said, okay, look, we'll try and connect the dots here. And we have this opportunity. We have relationships on both sides. Can we try and do that? So really, it was an opportunistic thing. I think the final point I'll make is that it took a huge amount of agility on our part. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. I was in a WhatsApp chat with my team, and then we said, "Yeah, should we try this out? All right, let's do it. How fast can we launch?" And then one of our restaurants said, "Okay, can we start this by Tuesday?" We said, "That's crazy. It's Sunday afternoon. How could we start something in 72 hours? A delivery business, like a month maybe, right? How could you start a delivery business in 3 days?" But everybody just really pulled together and hacked it. I will not deny that it was classic startup hacks of just doing whatever the hell was in the background, jamming it together, using string and scotch tape. and we got it working by Tuesday night. Did the first pilot. We managed to do, I think, something like 30 deliveries, all to our family and friends. And then Thursday, we went up and running, and we haven't stopped since Thursday. We now have a couple of hundred restaurants listed. We're doing a couple of, we're doing a good number of deliveries. It's growing exponentially week on week. So I think I would say we're nowhere in the leadership position here. You have your Grabs, your Deliveroo's, and hats off to those guys. They built enormous networks of drivers, restaurants, and diners over the years, and Odell, of course, as well. We're not, pretending that this market is a wide open one. It's a crowded market, but we also can't stand back and just watch the restaurants get zero revenue. So we're seeing it as an opportunity for us to help them and also do something with the resources that we have in this very, very difficult period for all the restaurants.
Yeah. Actually, so Arif, you did touch on something very interesting that I would like to spend a little bit more time on, which is the economics of food delivery. And so I'm keen to hear from, yourself, Alan, as well as Penny, since right now, I guess on all three platforms, there's some sale of food. I mean, Penny, you also mentioned, some hawkers on your platform selling through Carousel. What is your, I guess, differentiation to the restaurateurs or food suppliers? If you can share a little bit maybe about your economics, if you feel there's a difference in the supplier segment you're targeting, and then also if there's any difference in the customer segment you think your suppliers are targeting.
Okay, I'll just carry on since I'm already unmuted.
Yeah, sure.
For us, we don't think of it so much as differentiation as right now there is a gigantic market. Like with all respect to the rest of our peers in the food delivery market, right now it's less about cutting a bigger slice of the pie, right, of market share for ourselves. We're not trying to go from 10% to 15%, because the pie has expanded 5x, 10x during the circuit breaker period. People would never have dreamt about ordering full Michelin star meals at home. And I can tell you that during Mother's Day, we had people ordering from restaurant Zen, for example, which is like multiple Michelin star. Some guy ordered caviar for his mom, $900 worth of caviar for delivery. People wouldn't normally do that. So the market has suddenly been created. We're not trying to take a bigger slice of the pie. I think there's just too much pie for everyone to eat right now. So we're all scrambling to onboard as many restaurants that are trying to get onto delivery. We're trying to satisfy as many diners that are trying to get food at the moment. It's less about differentiation and more about serving over demand, I would say, right? There's just too much demand at the moment. But that said, on the economic side, it is also a very sensitive balance. You're right. You're balancing between taxi drivers or drivers, logistics providers who need to eat, right? They are having, they also have much less business. And the delivery costs that diners generally pay for food doesn't cover that. I think we can agree between all of us, Penny, Ellen, myself, that when you charge, if you were to charge a consumer a $15 to $20 delivery charge, right? Their jaws will hit the floor. They'll be like, what, are you trying to extort me? Whereas if you ask the same diner, how much does it cost me to take a taxi from home to this restaurant tonight for dinner? $15 to $20, that's reasonable. Of course, it's the same distance, it's the same vehicle. What's the difference in the cost? Nothing. But why are you willing to pay $15 when you're going to the restaurant? But if I ask you to reverse the direction and have the food come to you, you're saying, well, that's crazy. So logically, it doesn't make sense. It's more an emotional barrier or a psychological barrier to that cost. But the cost is still the same for the driver. And so it has to come out of the restaurant's share a little bit. So I think the balance is how much are restaurants able to give up, given that they are still not getting free rent, by the way. They still are renting these expensive spaces in the CBD or at Dempsey or whatever. You still have to pay those rents. They still have to bear the cost of the delivery. The diner is bearing some of the cost of delivery. And then in the middle, there's the three of us who, we have developers, we have salespeople, we have marketers who are also working, who also need to get fed. So I think it's a very sensitive balance. Nobody's quite got the balance right yet, everyone, not just in Singapore, but if you look globally, a lot of the people in the spotlight, Deliveroo and Uber and Grubhub in the US right now, are trying to find the right balance. I think it can be achieved. We suddenly have found a way to make the economics work. It isn't a super profitable business. Nobody's going to walk out of Chope tomorrow carrying a new Hermes handbag. I can promise you that. But it has to work for both the drivers and us and the restaurant. And I think we found a way to make that work. Just about.
Yeah. Okay. Alan, what about Otto?
I shall not share my trade secret. But okay, I'm just joking. But I think if you look at this thing, like I said, like what Ari had mentioned, we've been around for a while, testing out different things, and I think what is most important is about creating the ecosystem, right? There's your system fee, your usage fee, your solution fee. There's your online payment gateway fees that a lot of people will neglect. There's your credit cards, your Amex will tax you for it. And then there's logistics. Just like what Arif had correctly mentioned, when you take a taxi or a Grab, when you go to the restaurant, the cost is as that, right? And for restaurants, it's the same thing. When restaurants say $15 is expensive, well, you hire a part-timer, you get a part-timer to take, let's say, public transport, to go to the customer, deliver the food, and then come back. How much is that cost to you? Right. So when we look at this, I think unfortunately that's the case in Singapore. If we are in China, it's different, right? But this is Singapore. All the costs are higher. So obviously that's when you need to work out a balance on what is the costing that you as a restaurant is willing to accept, and then we work backwards to think what would be a feasible kind of order that you want to capture, right? What would be a palatable delivery charge that you want to pass on to your consumer? And another thing is always remember when you dine in, there's 10% service charge for a lot of those restaurants. Why is there no 10% service charge when it goes online? It's the same thing. There's still cost involved. It's just instead of a physical waiter, now you have a digital waiter and all the other things, packaging, blah, blah, blah. So I think that's one part that we really need to take care of. And if I were to add in a bit, I think the key thing like I've mentioned, economics. But the next thing is how can it operationally make sense? Because if you're getting 5 to 10 orders a day, that's fine. You can manage it manually. That's why a lot of restaurants say, you can WhatsApp me, right? I'll call my own comfort Telgro drivers or my freelance drivers. But when you're handling 100 to 200 orders a day, you need technology, right? And that's where the integration will comes into play. And then after that, you also need to think about everyone is doing delivery now. How can you stand out? The marketing portion needs to come up as well, right? How can you leverage on your own branding, leverage on your own existing customer database? So that's where we have really been trying to guide our restaurants. And instead of guiding them one by one, we actually created a community, where folks share best practices with each other, because it's no longer in the past whereby when there's 2 chicken rice, it's chicken rice war, right? These days, when there's 2 chicken rice, never mind, my customer will order from you this week. Your customer will order from me next week, right? So it's a matter of sharing this entire pie together and helping each other out to make the whole industry grow together. Yeah, so that's what, from our side, that's what we have seen so far.
Okay.
Yep.
What about Penny? Do you feel the food orders on Carousel are of a slightly different type?
Yeah, for sure. We're definitely not a food delivery marketplace. That's not our bread and butter. We see ourselves we're a community marketplace, and our role in that is to facilitate connections between users. So what we've seen and what we've responded to is supply and demand in these different groups. So some of it has been, our older user base who are unable to leave their houses to go and get their normal, let's say, hawker food, or even go to the supermarket. And then we also have another base of users who are looking for work, looking for things to do right now. So our role has really been like, how do we connect people like that to support each other in this time? So we definitely don't look into the logistics side of how it's actually going to happen. We allow the users to figure all of that stuff out themselves through chat. but really for our kind of F&Bs, we become a marketing channel for them, and hopefully try and connect users that are in need in these kind of times to each other.
Actually,
Actually
if I can
curious.
can I ask a
Yeah,
question?
go ahead.
So when you're dealing with the hawkers, I think that segment specifically is one of the most interesting problems that as a food delivery, for food delivery, because when you're ordering $3 mee pok, right, it's very difficult to envision how you're going to pay a delivery fee on that can justify the drivers. So I think, we've spent between all of us in the industry, we've been trying to figure that out, and yet nobody can figure it out. So somebody listening to this podcast can please has cracked the code. All power to you. Please go ahead and do it, because none of us can figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we're just looking at, like, it's hyper local for sure. It's the same hawker that you ordinarily used before, and it may be like a few minute walk away. We're not necessarily talking about trying to find a way to get a delivery driver to bring that to your door. It's like, what are my options? Can I just text him now and I'll come and pick it up and then I'll take it back home? Or can I get my next door neighbor to go and pick it up for me on the way down? So those are the kind of community connections that we're talking about.
Yeah, I think that
Agree with
makes
you.
sense. Yeah, like you need the community because it's high touch, right? In order to like deliver on that premise, because maybe you don't need to that delivery fee, and maybe the hawker is nearby and you only order from the hawker center nearby, so someone can go indeed pick it up for you for free out of the goodness of their own heart. So okay, that's a nice segue to our kind of next topic. This notion of there is good out there. And perhaps we could, ask Sarah, maybe start with Sarah, because I do know Sasha's Farms just launched. Maybe you can share a little bit with us on what that's about.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, exactly. It's one of, I think, the timing of this launch, which has been in the planning for 18 months. So it's sheer coincidence, kind of ties in with the mood, or maybe it's more of a movement towards kind of helping the little guys and acting as a community. And so, yeah, we've launched Sasha's Farms, which is basically a social enterprise, non-profit, helping the little guys. So at the moment we're working with 2 or 3 farmers in Bali who have created these amazing products but have no way to get them out to a wider market. So Sasha's Fine Foods is effectively a platform for them, but we want to take it wider. I mean, the most incredible ingredients, no compromise on quality, but we're just providing, a space for them to sell. And the reaction to it has been overwhelming, and I wonder whether it would have been so big kind of pre this crisis. It just seems like it's really captured an emotion. So it's been really, really interesting, and great news for the little guys out there. And I think there will be a huge change, which hopefully is here to stay, towards people being more open to these new brands, these smaller brands, particularly in food, moving away from sort of mass food brands into supporting local farmers. I mean, in other parts of the world, linking back to restaurants, a lot of our suppliers had huge businesses in restaurants, and overnight they lost all of that. We've got one particular trout farmer in the UK, and there's just been this amazing public support to help them and really make sure that their revenue is not completely lost. And I think it's absolutely fantastic, and hopefully it's here to stay.
Yeah, I mean, I checked out the product offering, and I am personally excited by it because I do like kombucha. So I do hope it does well.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I was
ahead.
going to say I didn't go into detail on the products because I'll let you. This is probably not the forum, but I'll let everyone discover for themselves. Yeah, kombucha is our first product.
Yeah, great. In terms of CSR or like how companies are going to market now, do you feel tapping into this doing good, community contributing to alleviating the situation is an important part of, I guess, how brands position themselves during this period. And Kairen, you do work with advertisers, I believe, or brands. Do you see any sort of this sentiment coming from your clients?
Yes, yeah, I think we do. I think generally, like I think everyone has been like trying like their best. And I mean we've been working with some of our advertisers and like even other content creators, like to try to help the community, especially like the hawkers. They are one of the communities that is really hit so badly. Yeah. So I mean in the last few weeks, like we've seen we have partnered with different people like other content creators, and Tripadvisor as well, to really help them like by surfacing their stories. I think a lot of them like get lost like under the radar, like just because like the traditional way of running their business is just like they're just there, like they're not doing anything like online. Yeah, so we've been helping them, like trying to surface the stories, get people to come to them, promoting them on like our different channels like Instagram. So one of the places that we've been also like tapping on is also like the community on Facebook. So like if you have seen like probably on Facebook you've got a Tapao community, right? Like one of the biggest like communities set up by one of the hawkers. Yeah, so we've been going there like and trying to help like people. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay. Taking a step back from our own businesses, have you come across anything, I guess, interesting that speaks to the good out there that made you say, hey, that's a great idea, or at least made you smile, be like, okay, that's a bright spot in your entire day of like being at home? Just any kind of stuff you want to share? Just it can be an idea, it doesn't have to be related to your own business.
Well, one interesting thing as we ventured into the delivery part of the business, and particularly during circuit breaker, was we saw a lot of people sending gifts to each other, right? A good portion of what people are spending their money on now is, they'll buy cocktails and then send it to 4 friends, and then let's have Zoom drinks, or they'll do gift baskets where I know for myself, I don't generally, like, I'm not a very like gifty kind of guy, but now because I've got all this time, I'm like, okay, if I want to say thank you, it's hard for me to take you out for lunch or dinner to say thank you. So I'll send a gift basket of pastries or something, right, from one of our restaurants. So it's pretty amazing how that has changed, and I think it's opened a new door to people, how people say thank you to each other rather than let's wait till next week and I take you out for dinner. Let me actually just send a delivery of something to you, right? So it's really been quite heartwarming to see that.
Well, adding on to Ari's story, I've got something very interesting to share. So what happened was there was this consumer who sent in multiple emails to us. I mean, theoretically, they should send it to the restaurant, but I don't know why they sent it to us. And then they said, if I get another order from this restaurant, I'm going to report to the police because he did not order for the food. The food was sent there 3 times, but it's paid for. The interesting thing was it was paid for. So he insisted on finding out who the person was. And after investigation, we realized it was his colleague. So he nearly reported his colleague to the police. So yes, I agree. There's a lot of friends that's sending out gifts, but one word of advice to everyone out there: please put your name to let the recipient know who you are. Don't need to act secretive here.
Yeah, you should claim the credit if you're gonna spend the money. Sarah, anything from your end?
So for me, it's sort of been, I feel like we're seeing a lot of the best of humanity here, and supporting everyone, and suddenly a focus on the frontline workers. I feel that hasn't been there before, I don't know, it was a big thing in the UK, and so it's slightly caught on here. I don't know how big it really got, was this clapping. So at 8 p.m. one Tuesday, I think in the UK they were doing it every Thursday, there was a sort of, the whole country got out into their gardens or terraces and clapped and did an applause. And I just think that's seriously emotional and an amazing act. And it's great because we kind of were too busy to do things like that before, weren't we? So yeah.
Yeah.
Or may I just add on something here? So because I think when I realized that Karen is gonna be here, right, I have this idea in mind because maybe I'll just share on this because as everyone will know, the media has been reporting about Mother's Day, the disastrous Mother's Day, right? And I guess if you look at some of the restaurants that has gotten quite a bit of bad rap, whereby deliveries were late, there are customers. The bad side of things is the ugly side is there are customers who are lobbying for people to boycott these restaurants, right? But I think one key thing that they have forgotten is yes, it's a slight mismanagement whereby they took in too many orders. But if you understand the heart of these restaurateurs, who are the operation managers? They are people who got kept, their job was secured because the bosses said, never mind, I'll still pay you. Continue to come and work for me, even though revenue has dropped so much. And they wanted to repay their bosses through working harder on Mother's Day by getting in more orders. I think, yes, we agree it might have resulted in a number of failed deliveries, bad experience for that day, but there's no need to, really penalize them in the long term, right? And all these restaurants had, asked for forgiveness, given compensation. So I think that's where, for Kaiyuan, I think that's an idea whereby we really start to feature, I think, the heart and soul, the stories of the people who are serving food. These people have mothers too, right? And they are working in a restaurant to serve food out. So I think as a community, it's important for us to always remember that of the stories that of all these people who are serving us. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Okay,
think
got it.
that's
Yeah.
certainly
Take it. I'll take it to the creative
for
team.
Karen. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
create a short video on like Mother's Day, the other side of the story or something like that.
Karen, you can PM me later. I'll link you up.
Okay, can, no problem. Yeah. I
see that
have an
happen.
interesting one that I want to share also. Like one of the campaigns that we supported is actually the Tekka online market, which I thought was really cool. Yeah, so it's a campaign by IMDA and BlockJ. Like together they brought like the whole Tekka market like online. Yeah, and it allowed like people to actually like explore, actually buy like food online. Yeah, which really helps, and I think it's really had a positive impact. Yeah, so and it's really like creative use of like the different tools that we have, like Facebook Live, and people to host the show, and to actually get people to buy food. Yeah, so I think that's one of the campaigns that I really liked. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. When I saw the Tekka Market initiative, to me it was like, wow, we are becoming more like China, like how they sell a lot of stuff via live streaming. Even in the travel space, I believe the chairman of C-Trip himself went online and managed to sell like a record amount of, I think, like tour packages for domestic tourism in China. So I think that's, it's really interesting. And I guess the next question I have for the group is, some of these changes that you see, whether it's selling stuff via live streaming or, full-on launching, what are some shifts, especially on the technology or product front, that you think are here to stay beyond COVID-19? And it can be general, again, not specific to your business.
I mean, obviously the video conferencing world has completely changed, and people's willingness to do things and share things over video from their houses is drastically different. So my 2-year-old is experienced in Zoom now, and she will do her lessons through that, which is not something we ever would have considered before. There's people doing sports through that. My mom in the UK is a doctor, and she's running a lot of her clinics now virtually. She says they will never go back to the way they were. So I think, at least on that side, our behavior will never go back just to being face to face in some circumstances. We can use video more in future.
My answer is absolutely self-serving. I'll say that first. I think food delivery is here to stay for the restaurants, and I say that beyond it as an advertising pitch. I'll say it because from a pure economics point of view, I think all businesses need to be very cautious for the long term, right? This situation is not going to resolve in a month or a quarter's time. It's going to carry on for years, and a diversified revenue stream is going to be so important to any offline business. It no longer makes sense for you to have the prime spot in Raffles City or in the CBD anymore, as much as it does to have a high-ranking SEO search result. And so I think a lot of the capabilities for digital marketing and online delivery for restaurants and for e-commerce as well are going to become so important and long-lived. 42% of our restaurants, not our restaurants, restaurants in Singapore, 42% had never done food delivery before circuit breaker. They came onto that. To Alan's point about a lot of them messing up doing the Mother's Day delivery. I mean, you have to understand that these are restaurants they've gone from like just learning from how to go from walking to running to suddenly being enrolled in the Olympics, right? So a lot of them are like, okay, so how do I do packaging? I need a plastic box. Where do I get plastic? Oh wait, oh damn it, 400 orders just came in for Mother's Day, and everybody wants their order at 10 in the morning for brunch. And if they don't get their order on time, they're going to scream at me because their mother is going to disown them. So how do you go from there to there? It's difficult, but once you go there, you just can't go back either, right? You can't suddenly say stop. So I think there's going to be a long-lived B2B effort where businesses who were not already online, there's still a lot of them who are in denial. I think all of us can agree that there's still a lot of brick and mortar businesses who are still standing back saying, once this crisis ends, we will go back to the way of life it was before. I don't know how many times we have to say it. This is a new normal. This is not a blip on the radar. It's an entire shift change. So, that's my opinion of it anyway.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. I was not a takeaway person at all, and I think what's really changed is the quality. Because the restaurants are now doing the takeaway, it's just amazing what you can get. As you were mentioning the caviar before, you can have oysters, you can just have anything. And I think that's completely changed the way that I see takeaway. And I think it's fantastic. And I think it's incredible how they've pivoted to that service in such a small amount of time. For us, we were always very much not a team that worked remotely, and now obviously we are. So I think that for us, that'll be a big change in the business. We will do more working remotely, and then I think there's going to be a lot more competition, isn't there, online? A lot of the wholesale businesses, food businesses, are now starting retail. Everyone's going to be wanting to revamp their website, etc. So I think, yes, we had some digital projects which we were in the pipeline. They've now sort of become top priority. So I think we will be accelerating our UX and all the tech projects. So that's what we'll take away.
Great. We are running out of time, so I'll just ask one last question, and maybe we can just go around the room. So you can answer either of these or both. From a leadership standpoint, how do you keep your staff and colleagues motivated? So you can talk about that. Or if you want to share one new thing you've learned from this period, or one new habit you've adopted, as well as any parting thoughts with our audience. Let's go with Penny first. I keep calling on Penny because she's on the top left-hand side of my screen, so she's the first person I see.
Putting me on the spot. Sorry, what was the first one again?
Leadership standpoint.
Oh, my team.
How do you keep your team motivated? Or if you want to share something personal that you've learned or a new habit you've adopted during this period.
I think the team one is super interesting. And for me, it's been doubly challenging because I basically haven't met my team in person. So I started working at Carousel the day that the circuit breaker went live. So our only interaction is virtual. And it does take a lot of work to maintain those personal relationships and make sure that you're not just kind of operating in a transactional way. You don't have the opportunity to sit down and have a cup of tea with somebody and see how they're doing. So you really have to make the effort to do those kind of activities virtually. And you have to schedule them in, and it's boring. but that's what you have to do. I think Carousel itself has done a lot of really good initiatives. We have Wellness Wednesdays. One of the marketing girls is doing yoga right now. We had a mindfulness session. We had some HIIT sessions, just employees doing it themselves for other colleagues. And I think all of those small things really help. I think also keeping us motivated for the day that we can all come back together and see each other again is what we're looking forward to too.
Yeah. Ian?
Okay. I think for me, like personally, one of the things is really looking at how we communicate. I think because you don't see each other face to face, right? So I think so many things get lost. And for me, it's really just double checking myself, okay, maybe doing it this way would be better, trying to communicate the team. It takes so much to communicate correctly, in this current situation. Yeah, and I think but I think we are very grateful that the team has been very understanding. I think from a leadership standpoint, also I think one of the things is that is what's been working great is that to be very clear about how the company is doing. And I think that's very important for all companies, to be very clear about how the company is doing and how we are dealing with this current situation, because the staff, they need to know. Yeah, otherwise, it's really difficult for them as well. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. Ellen?
Right. For us, I guess the interesting thing is because most of I'm still in office. A few of us still can come back to office, but I guess for those. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm very jealous, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can get out of my house, but in any case, I think what we have done is we give our staff a budget to order food. Because in the past we used to have Thursdays whereby we drink and eat in office. So right now we can't do that, but we want to let them have a good time with their family. I think that's what we stand for. Although we are very much like a family with each other. So I think from the leadership standpoint is to let them know that even though we are away, we are still staying connected, right? And I guess on a personal level, what I've learned, I think it's important to have very good company name, right? Because I guess in the past when I have something to sell and I don't know where to sell, I'll go to Carousel. Let's Carousel this thing away, right? And then after that, you want to hear something about, let's say, a brand called Sasha's Fine Food. Oh, you can, let me tell you a grandfather's story, right? And then, of course, last time when we want to make reservation, we'll chope seat, right? So we can go to show. And then right now, I think at the end of the day, what we want to do is that next time you want to order food for people, you know where to go. Yeah, so I think in terms of the company name, it's very important. Yeah. Cool.
Sarah?
I'm going to answer the second question, something I've learnt and appreciate from this period. And it's the customers. It's what a loyal customer base we have. And I think it goes the same for the restaurants. Suddenly the restaurants realize what a loyal customer base they have, and hugely kind of supportive and forgiving, more than you'd ever have thought. And we know year to date, because we've just done a survey, that a third of our new customers heard about us because it was recommended by a friend. And that's just staggering. So I think there's a sort of newfound appreciation for the customers.
Ari, last one?
Yeah. Well, for us, it's been two sides of this story, right? The first is the obvious, that working from home has created a lot of difficulties in getting all that fun stuff. When you work together, especially in a startup like ours, you're not just there because you're there to draw the paycheck. That's part of it, but because you also love the people you work with, right? A lot of our team, culturally, they love working with their friends, and that's gone, and it's been gone for 3 months now, and especially for people who have family commitments and everything, it just really starts to wear them down. So I can't deny that it's taken its toll on people. Keeping them motivated is extremely difficult. Some of the tools that we've taken, first of all, we had always communicated in casual ways on WhatsApp, but we really institutionalized some of that stuff by moving a lot of that communication to Slack. So now what we have is we are really marrying your memes and your GIFs together with your emails and your work, right? So in the same thread, you'd be like, okay, guys, here's my work plan for this week, and then underneath somebody be like, meme, make a meme out of it, and it just becomes a casual communication from morning till night. And again, there's issues with that too. As I said, it's a double-edged sword. Those communications don't stop at 5 p.m. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 people are still slacking each other. So there's now a whole new set of issues that have opened up because of this increased communication. On the other hand, I would also say that we previously used to be a company that was spread across multiple offices. We had 7 offices or 8 offices, some small ones in Bali and Phuket, and some big ones in Singapore and Beijing. But now it feels a lot more like one company, right? Because we're all on digital platforms like Slack or email, WhatsApp. We're equally distanced. Even if I live just down the street from you, if I live one, 6-hour flight away, we're communicating on equal standing. So it's really created for the first time an opportunity for us to be equals in a single company. I'm not just a Singapore office, I'm not just a Hong Kong office, but we're trading stories and we're all joined by this crisis together, right? All of us are talking about, does alcohol hand sanitizer work better than the non-alcoholic type? It's just like stuff you can chat with across countries. It's kind of strange, but that's I guess the silver lining to this really dark cloud. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're all more physically distant, but somehow, hopefully, we're actually more together in spirit. So with that, Penny, Kairen, Arif, Alan, Sarah, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed the discussion. I hope you guys did as well. And for the audience watching this, thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of Tripadvisor Talk. Tune in next week for an exciting episode focusing on sustainability, conservation, and the future of tourism, which will be hosted by my colleague Sarah Matthews. And many thanks again to all of you, all our panelists today, for your time. And stay safe, everyone. And remember that even in times like these, there's good out there.